I discovered my husband and best friend were having an affair while I was working abroad to pay for his medical treatment, then they had the audacity to ask me to keep sending money. The last few days have completely turned my life upside down, and I needed somewhere to put all of this down. I, 25F, married Sebastian, 24M, last year after being together for 4 years. We had what I thought was a perfect relationship. He was kind, supportive, and made me laugh every single day. Elaine, 25F, has been my best friend since we were 5 years old. We grew up on the same street, went to school together, and have been inseparable for 20 years. We're so close that we often introduce each other as distant cousins, and no one questions it because we act like family. Elaine was my maid of honor at our wedding, and she gave this beautiful speech about how she was gaining a brother in Sebastian. Early this year, Sebastian started having respiratory problems. After many tests, he was diagnosed with a rare form of cystic fibrosis. It was devastating news. The treatments are expensive, and to make matters worse, our insurance denied coverage, claiming it was a pre-existing condition that Sebastian hadn't disclosed. I still don't understand how they got away with that, but we couldn't afford to fight them legally. The medical bills started piling up fast. Sebastian's condition got worse, and he had to stop working at his construction job. I was working as a nurse at a local hospital, but my salary wasn't enough to cover our rent, bills, and Sebastian's treatments. We were drowning in debt within months. I started researching options and found that hospitals in Germany were hiring nurses at nearly triple what I was making here. The decision wasn't easy, but it seemed like our only option. I talked it over with Sebastian, and we agreed that I would go work in Munich for a year or two, send money back for his treatments, and then return once we were financially stable again. The hardest part was figuring out who would help Sebastian with daily care. He wasn't completely incapacitated, but there were days when he needed help with basic tasks, and his treatments required assistance. We couldn't afford a home nurse. That's when Elaine stepped in. She offered to move into our spare bedroom and help Sebastian while continuing her part-time job and online classes. She insisted it was no problem since she could do most of her university work from home. When I expressed concern about her making such a big sacrifice, she said, "Sebastian is like a brother to me. This is what family does." I left for Germany 4 months ago with a heavy heart but felt relief knowing Sebastian was in good hands. I video called them almost every day, and everything seemed fine. Sebastian appeared to be doing better, and Elaine seemed to be managing well. I was working 60-hour weeks and sending home over half my paycheck for Sebastian's treatments and our bills. Last week, I managed to save enough money for a plane ticket home. I wanted to surprise Sebastian and Elaine with a visit. I didn't tell either of them I was coming. I thought it would be a wonderful surprise after months apart. I arrived at our house around noon. I used my key to enter quietly, thinking I might catch Sebastian napping as he often did in the afternoons. The house seemed different somehow. There were candles on the dining table and wine glasses in the sink. I noticed Elaine's textbook spread across the coffee table alongside Sebastian's medication. I heard laughter coming from our bedroom. Not just any laughter, the kind of intimate laughter shared between people who are comfortable with each other. I walked toward the bedroom, my suitcase still in hand. The door was partially open. What I saw next will stay with me forever. Sebastian and Elaine were sitting on our bed, the bed Sebastian and I had picked out together after our wedding. They weren't just sitting. They were wrapped in each other's arms, kissing. Not a friendly peck, but a deep, passionate kiss that made it clear this wasn't the first time. I must have made a noise because they suddenly broke apart and looked toward the door. The look on their faces, shock, guilt, but not enough guilt, told me everything I needed to know. Elaine jumped off the bed first. She started saying my name over and over, but I couldn't respond. Sebastian just sat there, pale and staring. When he finally spoke, what he said made everything worse. He said they didn't mean for it to happen. They'd grown close while I was away. Elaine said that taking care of Sebastian had made her realize her true feelings for him. The worst part came next. Elaine told me she was pregnant. 3 months pregnant. They'd been together almost since I left. I couldn't speak. I couldn't even cry. I just stood there, trying to process what was happening. Then came the part that still makes my blood boil when I think about it. Sebastian took my hand and actually thanked me. He thanked me for going to Germany because it had brought him and Elaine together. Then Elaine joined in, saying how grateful she was that I had given them this chance to find each other. But it got worse. They didn't want me to stop sending money. Sebastian explained that Elaine had put her education on hold to care for him, and they couldn't afford his treatments or to raise a baby on their own. Elaine added that I owed it to her because of all the sacrifices she had made for me over the years. She started listing things, how she turned down a date to my high school prom with a boy she knew I liked, how she'd spent countless hours helping me study for nursing exams, how she'd put her life on hold to take care of my husband. My husband, who was now apparently the father of her child. Then came the kicker. They wanted me to stay married to Sebastian, at least on paper, until they could support themselves. Elaine explained that with Sebastian's condition, they needed my health insurance and income. They had it all planned out. I would continue working in Germany, sending money home, while they lived in our house and raised their baby. Something snapped inside me. I told them both exactly what I thought of their plan. I told Sebastian I would be filing for divorce immediately. I told Elaine that 20 years of friendship meant nothing if this was how she repaid me. I said I would make their lives a living nightmare. I walked out of the house and checked into a hotel. Within minutes, my phone was flooded with texts from both of them. Elaine sent long paragraphs about her sacrifices and how I wasn't being fair. Sebastian sent messages about his health and how stress wasn't good for his condition. Neither of them seemed to understand the magnitude of their betrayal. I blocked both their numbers and called my parents. They were shocked but immediately supported me. My dad offered to let me stay with them while I sorted everything out. My mom started researching divorce lawyers before I'd even finished telling her what happened. I'm now at my parents' house, trying to figure out what to do next. I've contacted a lawyer and started the divorce process. I'm worried Sebastian will try to get alimony since I earn more than he does, and I'm prepared to fight that with everything I have. I want to get back some of the money I've invested in his treatments. The hardest part is realizing that the two people I trusted most in the world were living a lie while I worked myself to exhaustion trying to help them. Every video call, every message telling me they missed me, it was all fake. I keep wondering if I hadn't surprised them, how long would they have kept up the charade? Would they have waited until I'd paid off all of Sebastian's medical debts before telling me? I don't feel guilty about my reaction or my decision to divorce Sebastian. I don't feel guilty about cutting Elaine out of my life forever. But I do feel lost. I moved to another country to save my husband's life, and he repaid me by sleeping with my best friend. Now I'm back home with nothing but a broken marriage and a betrayal so deep I don't know how to process it. Elaine's parents have always been like second parents to me. I haven't told them yet because I know it will break their hearts. Sebastian's parents have always been kind to me, and they don't deserve to find out their son did this. I'm going to continue with the divorce proceedings, but I'm not sure what else to do. Part of me wants to tell everyone what they did, but another part just wants to disappear back to Germany and never look back. I don't know which path to take. Update when it's been 3 weeks since I discovered Sebastian and Elaine's betrayal, and things have escalated in ways I never expected. After my last post, I decided to tell Elaine's parents what had happened. I've known them for 20 years, and they deserve to hear the truth from me rather than from Elaine or someone else. I went to their house the day after posting here. I was nervous, but they welcomed me with open arms as they always had. When I told them what Elaine and Sebastian had done, their reaction surprised me. Mr. Johnson, who has always been gentle and soft-spoken, threw his coffee mug against the wall. Mrs. Johnson burst into tears and kept saying, "Not our Elaine, she wouldn't do this to you." They didn't want to believe me at first, but they knew I wouldn't lie about something so serious. They called Elaine immediately and put her on speakerphone. When confronted, Elaine admitted everything but tried to justify their actions. She told her parents that she and Sebastian had fallen in love and that I was being vindictive by cutting them off financially. Her parents were horrified. Mrs. Johnson told Elaine she had not raised her daughter to steal another woman's husband, especially not her best friend's husband. The conversation ended with Mr. Johnson telling Elaine that until she came to her senses and ended things with Sebastian, she would receive no financial support from them. They had been paying her tuition and giving her a monthly allowance to supplement her part-time job income. Without their support and with her reduced work hours due to caring for Sebastian, Elaine would struggle financially. I felt a grim satisfaction at that, though I took no pleasure in seeing Elaine's parents' pain. The divorce proceedings began moving forward. Sebastian was served with papers 5 days after I filed. His response came quickly. He wasn't contesting the divorce but was indeed seeking alimony and a portion of my earnings from Germany, claiming they were marital assets since we were still married when I earned them. My lawyer assured me we had a strong case to deny alimony given the circumstances of our separation, but nothing is certain in court. We're gathering evidence of Sebastian and Elaine's affair, including text messages they sent to mutual friends about their relationship. Meanwhile, I hadn't heard directly from Sebastian or Elaine since I blocked their numbers, but that changed last weekend. Sebastian's parents showed up at my parents' house unannounced. They looked terrible, like they hadn't slept in days. Sebastian's mom was crying before she even made it through the door. They claimed they had no idea about Sebastian and Elaine's affair until the divorce papers arrived. They begged me to reconsider, not for Sebastian's sake, but for their own peace of mind. Sebastian's condition has been hard on them emotionally and financially. They admitted they'd been counting on my income to help with his treatments. The conversation took an uncomfortable turn when Sebastian's dad suggested I could look past this mistake given Sebastian's health condition. He implied that Sebastian's illness might have affected his judgment or that Elaine had taken advantage of his vulnerable state. Sebastian's mom added that the stress of my leaving the country might have pushed Sebastian toward Elaine for comfort. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They were making excuses for their adult son's betrayal and asking me to forgive the unforgivable. I told them as calmly as I could that while I sympathized with their situation, their son had made his choice when he decided to sleep with my best friend. Sebastian's parents left dejected but not before telling me that they had given Sebastian an ultimatum: end things with Elaine or lose their financial support too. Apparently, they had been helping pay rent on our house since Sebastian stopped working. The next day, I received an email from Elaine. She had created a new email address after I blocked her phone number. The email was long, over 2,000 words of self-pity and blame. She wrote that she had lost her parents' support, was struggling to pay for classes, and couldn't work more hours because of morning sickness. She blamed me for turning her parents against her and said that without my selfishness, their baby would have a more stable home. There wasn't a single genuine apology in the entire message. Not one acknowledgement that she had betrayed 2 decades of friendship. She ended the email by asking, no, demanding, that I send money for the sake of the innocent child. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the email to my lawyer to add to our case file. 2 days later, I ran into a mutual friend at the grocery store. She was awkward around me and kept trying to change the subject whenever I mentioned Sebastian or Elaine. Finally, I asked her directly what was going on. She confessed that Sebastian and Elaine had been telling people that I abandoned Sebastian when he got sick, moving to Germany to find myself while leaving him to fend for himself. They were painting themselves as victims and me as the villain. I was furious. I showed her my bank statements on my phone, all the transfers I'd made to our joint account for Sebastian's treatments. I showed her the text from before I left, where Sebastian thanked me for being willing to go to Germany for his sake. She was shocked and apologized for believing their lies. Armed with this new information, I decided to get ahead of their narrative. I sent a brief, factual message to our closest friends explaining the real situation. I didn't attack Sebastian or Elaine personally, just stated the facts. I went to Germany to earn money for Sebastian's treatments, and while I was gone, he and Elaine began an affair that resulted in pregnancy. The response was overwhelming. Friends I hadn't heard from in years reached out to offer support. Several of Elaine's friends from college told me they were disgusted by her actions and had cut contact with her. Sebastian's health has reportedly gotten worse since all this began. His cousin, who has remained neutral throughout this ordeal, told me that the stress of the situation has exacerbated his symptoms. Part of me feels terrible about that. I never wanted his health to suffer. But a larger part of me remembers that he created this situation, not me. The divorce is moving forward, but it will take time. In our state, there's a mandatory waiting period before a divorce can be finalized. I'm using this time to decide whether to return to Germany or stay here and rebuild my life. The hospital in Munich has offered to extend my contract, and the distance might be exactly what I need. For now, I'm focusing on work. I've picked up shifts at my old hospital to keep busy, spending time with my parents, and trying to heal from this betrayal. It's not easy, but each day gets a little more manageable than the last. Update 2: It's been 2 months since my last update, and there have been significant developments in this ongoing nightmare. The divorce proceedings have continued, though not as smoothly as I'd hoped. Sebastian's lawyer has been fighting aggressively for alimony, arguing that Sebastian's medical condition makes him unable to support himself. My lawyer countered with evidence of the affair and Sebastian's breach of marital vows. The judge seems sympathetic to my position but has not made a final ruling yet. About 3 weeks ago, Sebastian showed up at my parents' house unannounced. I was at work, but my mom was home. According to her, Sebastian looked terrible, thin, pale, and out of breath. He begged to speak with me, saying he had important things to tell me that couldn't be said through lawyers. My mom, always the diplomat, suggested he write me a letter instead. She gave him paper and an envelope and left him alone at the kitchen table. She said he sat there for nearly an hour, writing and rewriting. When he finished, he sealed the envelope and asked her to make sure I got it. I came home to find the letter on my bed. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. What I read made me more angry than sad. Sebastian wrote that he and Elaine had broken up. Not because he realized his mistake or because he wanted to reconcile with me, but because without my income and with both sets of parents cutting financial support, they couldn't afford to stay together. He wrote that Elaine had moved back to campus housing, and he was staying with his cousin temporarily. The letter went on to blame me for their breakup. He claimed that if I had been understanding about their relationship, they could have worked out an arrangement that benefited everyone. He actually suggested that I should have accepted their affair and continued to support them financially because Elaine was always part of our family anyway. Toward the end of the letter, Sebastian mentioned Elaine's pregnancy again. He wrote that he was worried about his child growing up without both parents and blamed me for creating a broken home before the baby was even born. He asked me to consider the child's needs above my wounded pride. I showed the letter to my lawyer, who advised me not to respond. She said any communication outside of legal channels could potentially be used against me in court. I took her advice and didn't contact Sebastian. A week after receiving the letter, I ran into Elaine at the pharmacy. I was picking up a prescription for my dad, and she was in the prenatal vitamin aisle. Her pregnancy was more visible now, and she looked tired and stressed. When she saw me, she froze for a moment before approaching. She tried to engage me in conversation, asking how I was doing in a tone that suggested we were still friends who had simply grown apart. I remained polite but distant, answering her questions with minimal information. Then she mentioned that she was struggling financially and having difficulty keeping up with her classes while preparing for the baby. I thought she was working up to asking for money again, but instead, she revealed something that caught me completely off guard. She told me that she and Sebastian had been involved once before, years ago, before Sebastian and I started dating. It had been brief, just a few weeks, and they had kept it secret because they both valued their friendship with me more than their attraction to each other. This new information made me question everything. Had they been attracted to each other all along? Was Sebastian's interest in me genuine, or was I just a convenient way for him to stay close to Elaine? Had their affair truly started while I was in Germany, or had it been going on longer than that? When I didn't respond, Elaine became defensive. She said she was only telling me now because she thought I deserved to know the whole truth. Then she asked if I would consider dropping the fight against Sebastian's alimony request, for old time's sake and for the sake of her child's father. I told her that our friendship was over the moment I found them together, and that no amount of truth now would change that. I walked away as she called after me, her voice drawing attention from other customers in the store. That night, I received multiple text messages from a number I didn't recognize. It was Elaine using a friend's phone. She apologized for ambushing me at the pharmacy but insisted we needed to talk face to face. She claimed there were things I didn't understand about the situation, complexities that couldn't be explained in text messages. I didn't respond. Instead, I blocked the new number and sent a message to my lawyer documenting the encounter. My lawyer advised me to avoid any places Elaine might frequent and to consider getting a restraining order if the unwanted contact continued. The strain of all this has taken a toll on my health. I've lost weight, had trouble sleeping, and called in sick to work more times in the past month than in my entire nursing career. My parents are worried about me, and honestly, I'm worried about myself too. I decided to accept the extended contract in Munich. I'll be leaving in 2 weeks, right after the next court date for the divorce proceedings. My lawyer assures me that I can handle most of the remaining legal matters remotely, with occasional video conferences as needed. The hardest part has been seeing the impact of this situation on Elaine's and Sebastian's parents. Elaine's mom reached out to me last week. We met for coffee, and she spent most of the time apologizing for her daughter's actions. She told me that Elaine had always been slightly jealous of me, of my career focus, my relationship with Sebastian, even my closer relationship with her parents sometimes. Mrs. Johnson said she never thought that jealousy would lead to such a betrayal, and she was still struggling to reconcile the daughter she raised with a person who could do this. I'm tired of the drama, the confrontations, and the emotional upheaval. I'm looking forward to returning to Munich, where I can focus on my work and begin rebuilding my life without daily reminders of betrayal. The hospital environment there is demanding but rewarding, and the friends I've made among the international staff have been supportive throughout this ordeal. The waiting period for the divorce will be over soon. Once that hurdle is cleared, the property division and alimony decisions will be the last legal ties binding me to Sebastian. I'm hopeful that by the time I post my next update, those issues will be resolved as well. Update 3. It's been half a year since my last update, and I'm writing this from my apartment in Munich. The past 6 months have brought closure in some ways and new beginnings in others. The divorce was finalized 4 months ago. The judge denied Sebastian's request for alimony, citing the affair and the fact that our marriage had been relatively short. I was required to pay a one-time settlement that amounted to about 3 months of my salary here in Germany, which was far less than what Sebastian and his lawyer had demanded. The judge took into account the money I had already sent for Sebastian's medical treatments while working abroad. Sebastian didn't take the ruling well. According to my lawyer, he became agitated in court, raising his voice and claiming the judgment was unfair given his medical condition. The judge reminded him that his health issues, while unfortunate, did not entitle him to ongoing support from a spouse he had betrayed. Elaine gave birth to a baby boy 2 months ago. I learned this not from her directly, but from her mother, who still keeps in touch with me occasionally. Mrs. Johnson told me that Elaine and Sebastian tried to reconcile after the baby was born, but their relationship remains unstable. They're living in a small apartment paid for partly by Sebastian's parents, who reversed their decision to cut him off after their grandson was born. Elaine dropped out of her university program and is working full-time at a retail job while Sebastian's parents watch the baby. Sebastian's health has stabilized somewhat with a new treatment regimen, but he still cannot work full-time. He's doing part-time data entry from home, which provides some income but not enough for them to be self-sufficient. Elaine tried to contact me again after the baby was born. She sent a photo of the newborn with a message saying she hoped that someday I could be part of her son's life as an aunt figure. I didn't respond. Whatever relationship she envisions for us in the future is pure fantasy. Some betrayals are too profound to move past, and hers is at the top of that list. My life in Munich has taken on a rhythm and purpose I didn't expect. What started as a desperate move to earn money for Sebastian's treatments has become a career opportunity that's opened doors I never knew existed. I've been promoted to a charge nurse position in the ICU, and I'm taking intensive German language courses to improve my communication with patients and colleagues. I've made real friends here, other expatriate nurses from the UK, Australia, and Canada who understand what it's like to build a life far from home. We formed a tight-knit group that meets weekly for dinner and supports each other through the challenges of working in a high-stress environment in a foreign country. There's a new apartment, a new circle of friends, and a sense that my life is finally moving forward rather than being defined by what happened with Sebastian and Elaine. I've started dating again, cautiously. A doctor from the orthopedic department asked me to dinner last month, and we've seen each other a few times since. It's too early to know if it will develop into something serious, but it feels good to know that my capacity for trust wasn't completely destroyed. I returned to my hometown briefly for Christmas, staying with my parents and seeing a few old friends. Sebastian learned I was in town and left voicemails asking to meet for closure. I declined. Whatever closure he needs isn't my responsibility to provide. Elaine's parents invited me over for dinner during my visit. They've maintained their relationship with Elaine for their grandson's sake but have been clear with her about their disappointment in her choices. During dinner, Mrs. Johnson mentioned that Elaine had admitted the affair with Sebastian had actually started before I left for Germany. They had been meeting secretly for weeks while I was working extra shifts to save money for my move abroad. This confirmation of an even earlier betrayal validated my decision to cut them both out of my life completely. The most unexpected development came from Sebastian's parents. Mr. and Mrs. Turner sent me a letter a month ago, apologizing for their initial reaction to the divorce. They wrote that after seeing Sebastian and Elaine struggle with parenthood and financial responsibilities, they better understood the magnitude of what Sebastian had thrown away. They thanked me for the care I had shown Sebastian during our marriage and expressed regret that things had ended the way they did. I appreciated their letter but didn't feel the need to respond. Those connections to my past life are becoming increasingly distant, like looking through the wrong end of a telescope. I've decided to extend my contract in Munich for another year. The hospital is sponsoring me for a more permanent resident status, and I'm considering making this move permanent. There's a nursing leadership program I've applied to that would further advance my career, and my growing fluency in German has made daily life here much easier than it was a year ago. Sometimes I think about how different my life would be if I hadn't walked into our bedroom that day and discovered Sebastian and Elaine together. Would I still be working myself to exhaustion, sending money home for treatments, unaware that I was funding their life together behind my back? How long would their deception have continued if I hadn't caught them? These questions have no answers, and I've learned that dwelling on them serves no purpose. Instead, I focus on the life I'm building now. It's not the life I planned when I married Sebastian, but in many ways, it's better. I'm more independent, more confident in my abilities, and more careful about who I allow into my inner circle. I won't be posting any more updates about this situation. The divorce is final, the legal battles are over, and my connection to Sebastian and Elaine is severed. Their life together, or apart, is no longer my concern. This chapter of my life is closed, and I'm writing new ones that have nothing to do with betrayal and everything to do with the future I'm creating for myself.